I've changed, and I don't have any skeleton in my closet.
You were saying
from
that
the
you're
point that I
100%
changed.
saint now?
I'm not saying that I'm a saint, but I don't do those things.
In the early 1990s, Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson began his ministry as a student of Roy Masters, a British-born talk radio personality and hypnotist. Peterson and Masters promoted a similar system of meditation and theology, a system that includes rejecting the Holy Trinity and our blessed Lord's divinity.
You blame things that you do, nobody else. No.
But thanks to the feckless and spiritually absent bishops, Jesse's theological errors didn't keep him from gaining tens of thousands of Catholic and patriotic followers. Jesse's draw for conservatives was his commentary against the Marxist group Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter, radical so-called social justice warriors, they were chanting, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want it? Now. Pigs in the blanket, fry them like bacon. And people went out and started killing cops and everything.
Back up!
Exploiting many angry American men's desires for a stable family life, Jesse would directly call out feminists for their role in destroying the family as well.
Sexism is a made-up lie, and it's been made up by women who hate men, who hate the family, who hate the unborn child.
The 73-year-old even visited the Church Militant studio in March, when senior executive producer Michael Voris answered his questions about Catholicism.
Did Jesus just rise from the dead in spirit, or did his body come out also?
He was, maybe his body came out, I don't know. But I know.
Well, that's a big deal.
He rose in the spirit. That's what.
No, he rose in the body.
Why I want to make that.
But he rose in the body. You can't say he didn't walk out of the tomb on Sunday.
And for what we knew at the time, Jesse was an ardent opponent of homosexuality in and outside the church, and presented himself as such.
The spirit of homosexuality is of their father, the devil. It's not them, the person. It's the spirit that made a home in them. And it came from them overreacting to some sort of a situation in life, whether it's from someone messing with them when they were kids, or overreacting to an angry mother, because you become like what you hate.
But shortly after the March interview, friends of his came to us with a different story. These stories first came to light when Jesse's former co-host and alleged decade-long gay lover exposed him. 61-year-old Patrick Rooney has known Jesse for nearly 30 years, dating back to roughly 1992.
Everybody know Patrick Rooney, one of the smartest white men on this side of heaven.
The two were so close that Jesse was the minister at his wedding and the pastor at his baptism, long before Rooney claimed any homosexual activities began.
Right around that time, I also had started a TV show. I was doing a public access TV show in LA, and with a friend of mine who had gotten off heroin and wanted to, he asked me to be involved in the show to help other people get off drugs and things like that. So we started a show, and one of our first guests was Jesse and another gentleman from Bond. So we did a couple shows with them. And from that time forward, right after the show happened, Jesse and I talked in the green room, backstage. And right off the bat, he started asking me stuff. Jesse's very forward with his questioning and things like that. So he actually asked me right after that show, are you gay?
Rooney's characterization shows that Jesse allegedly used similar grooming tactics as other homo predators, like Saginaw priest Father Robert DeLand, who asked similar questions when preying on a young man in 2017.
To discover that you have some gay tendencies is a fine thing, because then you don't have to be so confused.
Right.
Do you feel less confused?
Do you? Yeah.
After Jesse discovered Rooney's same-sex attraction, his relationship with Jesse was taken to the next level. Bit by bit, Jesse began edging him closer and closer to sin.
Once he moved up there to do the show, we stayed in the same house. Jesse would kind of do some things, kind of horseplay and stuff like that with me. And at times he would do stuff where he would like grab me and then we'd kind of wrestle around a little bit. And then I'd feel his, private parts against me. And he did that more than once. So it wasn't like an accidental thing. He would kind of do it. And then I even mentioned it like, what's that or whatever. And he would kind of play around and joke about it.
Fast forward to 2005, and Jesse was ready to make his final move.
We did a conference with them called Moral Reconstruction, which is kind of ironic now that we're sitting here talking about something else. It's called Moral Reconstruction. We did that. That first conference was, I believe, in 2005, and we did a follow-up conference in 2006 with them as well. And I went with Jesse to Washington, D.C. For this conference. I was a fundraiser at the time. And so we did fundraising, and I was part of the conference. While we were at the conference, we stayed in Virginia, near DC. So we were sitting on the bed together, and all of a sudden he turned to me and just looked at me, and he said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do?" And he said it in a tone that was really insistent. And I'd never seen this tone from him before. It was like kind of scary. It kind of scared me. Like what? What do you want to do? I knew what he meant, and then I told him, okay. And at first I'm scared, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm playing along here. It kind of threw me off my game, I guess, in a way. I think later I realized that's kind of something that people do sometimes. It's like the devil works in a certain way by intimidating you, and it throws you off your normal game. And so he said, "What do you want to do?" And he was like, "Okay, I'm scared." And then I told him what I want to do. I mentioned sex acts, that he knew about, that I had already talked to him about, that I was interested in. And next thing you know, he's ripping his clothes off and coming at me, basically. And I did the same, took my clothes off. And next thing you know, we're fully at it, having, not getting into detail here, but basically full-on sexual acts.
Rooney's recollections show that Jesse mirrored DeLand's sexual advances almost identically.
I love you. Love you too. I know. What are we gonna do? I don't know. No, what are we gonna do, really?
Rooney's description shows that after their sexual encounter, Jesse began intertwining his private homosexualism with blasphemy.
After we had just done this first sexual act, and then ever since then, he told me that once we did this, I was born again. This sounds crazy, but this is the absolute truth. He said that I was born again. He would remind me of that through the years.
Following being born again, Rooney contends that his sodomitic relationship with Peterson went on for roughly 10 years, until Rooney decided to come clean to his wife and son.
My son was really angry. My son was mostly angry at me, because he had Jesse on such a pedestal. My son had Jesse on such a pedestal, he literally thought Jesse could walk on water. We got on a phone call, we talked to Jesse, and as soon as we brought it up with my son on the phone call, Jesse denied it. And I said, "Jesse, you're a liar. You're lying. You know you're lying." And he finally came out and admitted to my son that he did that.
Rooney later moved to Florida to get away from Jesse. But according to Rooney, Jesse couldn't handle the relationship ending, offering him several bribes to get him back to LA. It's typical for homo predators to try and cover their tracks using a cornucopia of strategies to shut people up. In the case of Father DeLand, it was now deceased Saginaw Bishop Joseph Sistone, who remained silent on DeLand's abuse for years. While serving as an auxiliary bishop in Philadelphia in 1994, Sistone allegedly watched as documents containing names of up to 64 suspected sex abusers were shredded, earning him the nickname Bishop Shredder among the U.S. bishops. According to Rooney, for Jesse and those loyal to him, the strategy was to bully and silence all victims and witnesses speaking up.
Jesse did throw me under the bus, basically, and other people that did anything like that, and still does. If anybody comes up with it, they'll keep anybody off the air.
You're talking about other victims?
Well, other victims. And he'll make sure that if anybody talks about these things, calls up his show or does anything like that, they were not going to get through on his show.
Patrick explained how easy it was for Jesse to discredit victims, given Bond's history of seeking out troubled young men.
A lot of the people that Jesse brings around him are troubled young men, right? Have drug problems, right? Some of them been in jail. So it's pretty easy to discredit a guy who's been on drugs, maybe in jail or something like that. It's pretty rotten thing to do.
Beginning last November, Rooney began writing a collection of blog posts hinting at Jesse's predation, leading him to a shocking discovery.
After I published these articles, I found out from a young man, a very credible young man, that Jesse was fooling around with this young man.
That young man was 30-year-old Samuel Arambula, a more recent member of Bond and Jesse's latest known purported victim.
I started going to Bond around May 2020.
2020.
This was during the coronavirus lockdowns, everything. As soon as they opened back, they were doing live broadcasted, no in-person church for like 2 months or 2 weeks or something like that. But as soon as it opened up, I went. That was May 2020. Jesse, what he likes to do in the church is he goes around first-timers. He goes around first-timers and says, introduce yourself, what's your name, how'd you find us, where are you here? The first thing I said, my name is Samuel, and I'm here because, you helped me a lot. I went and forgave my mom, I went and forgave my dad, I had a lot of anger, and I just dropped that, and I feel way better now. I'm really, growing, and I want to thank you for it.
Among him are 3 other alleged witnesses and victims who also chose to tell their stories. Samuel began his relationship with Jesse professionally, washing cars for him and doing other cleaning work at what they call the Bond House. The Bond House is where Jesse and several of his male staff currently live. And when Samuel began opening up to Jesse about his past, things got personal.
I was molested as a boy, so I was like, Jesse, what do I do? Like, this is weighing heavy on me. What should I do? He said, forgive him, it's in the past. Our relationship progressed slowly, closer and closer. I didn't suspect anything weird of it. There were certain times where he began hugging me where I was like, whoa, I've never been hugged by a man. Like, what was this? But I was like, he would just tell me like, I just love you. So I'm like, okay, I get you, I love you too.
But, much like with Patrick Rooney, Samuel states things went from casually close to mortally sinful.
So a Friday afternoon, evening, I go to Jesse's house and I am sitting in his couch, relaxing, I'm kind of avoiding the LA traffic at the peak hour. So it's a good deal, and I get to stay somewhere with someone that I respect, friend. So then by this point, we're already real comfortable with like hugging and all that stuff, just hugging for long periods of time. I thought nothing weird of it. I guess my guard had already been let down completely. So I'm sitting on this couch, he kneels down in front of me, and then he wraps himself around, his arms around my waist. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird, but I'm like, Jesse, why are you doing that? He's like, I just love you so much. And I'm like, okay, I guess. I was just like this. So then he starts rubbing my thighs, and I'm like, okay, what is he doing? Like, it's kind of crazy. And then he starts rubbing my genital area, and I'm like, what's happening right now? And then he pulls down my pants, and then I'm like, I'm shocked. I'm not saying anything. I'm like, my face is like, whoa, what the hell is happening right now?
From there, Jesse instructed Samuel to go into his so-called meditation called the silent prayer.
And he's like, doubt all thoughts are lies. Everything Satan is telling you is a lie. And I'm like, okay, but inside it's telling me, hey, this is not good. What are you doing? What are you allowing him to do?
Samuel describes Jesse abusing the supposed meditative state, trying to convince Samuel to ignore the traumatic sexual experience occurring.
It went on for a few minutes. He would get up, walk away. I could hear him, I couldn't see him. He would get up, walk away. I could hear him get up, walk away, touch it, get up, walk away, touch it. And I was like, what the hell's going on? So then I opened my eyes, and then I'm like, what just happened?
Another alleged victim was Trayvon Chapman, who in 2015 told his friend, now 43-year-old Armand Martikian, that Jesse molested him.
The first thing came out of his mouth, that Jesse's homosexual. And I say, you can't be saying this, like he's all against it. He's a, straight conservative man who, this is like, what you're saying is bizarre, doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it kind of struck me as a truth. What this guy was saying, he was explaining the incidents, like certain acts that they would do. They had some nicknames. Jesse had nicknames for it, Say, instead of telling what the act is, he named it oral massage, according to Trayvon.
Armand tried to tell Jesse what Trayvon said, and he just dismissed it.
I went to Jesse. I said, Jesse, I bumped into Trayvon, and he was talking bad things about you. The moment I said that, his first response was, oh, he's on drugs. When he said he's on drugs, shivers went down my spine, like, uh-oh, aren't you gonna ask what he said about me?
Trayvon has since disappeared. None of the men have any idea of his current whereabouts, though they assume he's still somewhere in LA. After this encounter, Armand began questioning his own relationship with Jesse.
And then I had a flashback. Back in the day, it was such an insignificant thing that it never stayed in my memory, but for some reason, the flashback had, when I was in a private counseling, he kind of gestured me, let me see down there, pointing at my, referring to my, down there as in my privates. Not knowing what was about, I'm at very late teens at that moment, kind of got tricked into it, pulled my pants forward where he kind of looked at it, but at the same time, I'm thinking like, maybe he's trying to see if I'm shy, he's trying to help me overcome shyness, because I was a little shy, I didn't know what to make of it. I remember saying, if somebody sees us from outside, they're gonna think we're gay, I said. Later, I looked back, thought that the fact that I said, if somebody sees us, they're gonna think we're gay, he kind of probably thought that, okay, he's too aware, I'm not gonna advance any longer.
Former Bond House manager, 50-year-old Robert Santner, alleges he witnessed similarly strange behavior in 2021 between Jesse and current Bond producer James Hake.
What I witnessed, him and Jesse were hugging each other intensely, rubbing each other's shoulder down stuff, and he came to a point where I actually saw him kissing him on the cheek and stuff, on the hallway, and talking all kinds. I can't remember what the words he said, but there were a lot of giggling in the hallway, in his James' room, and then there was even one time that just really shocked the living hell out of me, is I went to the laundry room stuff, after I took the laundry out, and then when I got out, and there was a door open in Jesse's room, and there I saw Jesse was sitting in the bed, and while James Hake was wrapped around bed sheets, completely around like a burrito with his head sticking out. And Jesse was like embracing him and hugging him and stuff, and then kissing him on the forehead. And I was like, hey, are you all right?
Hake, to this day, is an ardent defender of Jesse and his ministry, essentially helping him ostracize all the men accusing Jesse of homo predation. Santner also described an incident where Jesse attempted grooming him to see if he was a homosexual.
Like there was one night, okay, I was all by myself. It was like late at night after I came home from work. I was in the kitchen, doing my own thing and stuff. And then suddenly there was Jesse appeared on the doorway, leaning against the doorway with his hand underneath his underpants. And he was like slowly massaging himself and was giving me a look, and I turned around and says, "What the heck are you doing?" And he was like giving me a smile and giggle and stuff, and then walked away.
Another witness is Martin Francis, who's largely been leading the charge against Jesse's purported homo predation. He describes himself as one of Jesse's best friends. You may recognize Francis from a video with Jesse arguing with a Univision reporter at a Prop 187 rally in Los Angeles in 1996, a rally opposing the flood of illegal aliens entering the state.
Are you all right?
Are you okay? Oh, I'm feeling better than ever.
Are you all right?
Yes, I'm all right.
Are you racist?
Am I what?
What are you think of these people now? Why? Why you stay
She
here?
said, are you racist? Am I racist?
Yeah.
No, I'm not a racist. Why do you ask that?
But since learning of Jesse's dark secret, Francis has led several protests against Peterson's homosexuality outside of the Bond studio. Jesse was confronted by him several times this year and refused to address any of the accusations of him preying on young men at Bond. Here's a video of Francis from March, facing off with him at what appears to be the post office across the street from the Bond studio.
Oh, that's nice. He wants me to tell them how I was sleeping with my brother's wife. That's fine. But Jesse, why will you not speak on your homosexual behaviors?
Francis confronted him again in the back of the building with Armand Martikian in February, capturing it all on video.
Jesse Peterson, I've known you for 25 years personally. will you come? See, he's not coming over to me. Will you at least stand there where you feel safe and talk to me? Stand up on your porch with the door open and shout out to me. Why won't you talk to me? I've known you for 25 years. I've accused you of heinous things, and you will not talk to me. You coward!
Francis admits there were also a few clues that should have revealed Jesse was a homosexual, long before he ever found out.
He wanted to see if I was willing to have a homosexual relationship with him, of course, because that's what he was all about. He was about putting out feelers there and seeing who he could have sex with. And it didn't work with me because I had not been molested as a boy. And so eventually I told him, look, Jesse, I'm just an angry guy and I don't like these long hugs and all this stuff we're doing, you know, at night.
And did he stop?
Where he would come into my bed and just lay with me, you know.
He would come into your bed and just lay with you?
Yes. And at one time even like put his hand underneath my underwear to go toward my genitals, right? He never got there because he could see I wasn't getting excited. So he never got there. He just like at the edge, you know, because you got to invite the vampire in, is what they say in the vampire movies. And it's sort of true with even psychic vampires like Jesse. And so he would do those kind of tricks or put his hand around my back and up on my chest and be hugging and all that kind of stuff just to see if maybe I could get, and asking me if, how does it feel? And it feels good, right? And all that kind of stuff. And I would meekly answer, yeah, it feels good. But only because when you're under that kind of pressure, you just give the answer that he wants, but you're really like wanting to get the heck out of there. You're like ready to fly out of there like a bat out of hell.
Jesse appears to have used every dirty trick in the book to silence him, allegedly trying to have Francis arrested for violating an unserved restraining order.
I will go back to Phoenix and chill out with the relatives like I was doing before, and I'll be back on the 25th. Okay.
25th,
Fortunately
yeah.
for you, this is in a sealed envelope today. If it hadn't been,
Yes.
you even got it.
Yes. If it was already served, you had already seen this, you would be going to jail.
Church militant asked every single victim and witness if they thought Jesse would continue sexually preying on men, and they all had the same answer.
Well, yeah.
I would say yes.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind.
There's no doubt that there's current victims.
I think for sure.
Jesse allegedly accuses these men of harassment, but some members of his own congregation disagree, like former bond house tenant Fabian Asensio.
The harassing is just an excuse for, trying to shut people down. Bond has been a nonprofit church for all these years. He's lied and collected a lot of money from that church, from people saying that, he's been a hidden homosexual. There's plenty of evidence for it. There's no reason for us to make up anything. So for someone to be out there in the alley and talking and trying to wake up the employees and say, hey, what are you doing? Why are you still working for this liar? That's totally within our First Amendment rights.
Jim Valerio, longtime donor and friend of Jesse's, also pushed back at his defenders.
And for those of you people who are still supporting this so-called fraudulent, hypocritical, serial predator homosexual, you are going to pay a price for that. That is a stain on your soul when you meet your creator. Period. Cut.
This isn't even the first incident. Jesse was embroiled in a homosexual scandal in October 2020, after his Twitter account liked a gay pornography image. After the tweet was left up for hours, Jesse's account was immediately locked down and set to private. One caller on his daily JLP show broadcast tried asking him about it, and Peterson hung up on him.
Did you lock your Twitter account because you got caught liking a gay OnlyFans post?
Amazing. Do you think I handle my own Twitter stuff?
Oh, somebody else did it? How come you locked the account?
None of your business. What the? Are you a homosexual or something?
No, but it doesn't really
Why
matter.
Are you such a beta male? What, you know all that stuff that's going on is not real, but you being a girl right now. What making you be a girl right now?
There's nothing wrong with it, Jesse.
There's nothing wrong with you being a girl?
They were in.
Goodbye.
On top of those we spoke to, There were several other anonymous alleged victims Church Militant was made aware of, who refused to speak with us per their devotion to Peterson and his so-called ministry. Jesse continues to deny his own actions to his congregants and his fans, shutting down any victims who stand in his way. For Church Militant Special Assignment, I'm Joseph Enders, Detroit.
You may talk about the men of Gideon, talk about the